Welcome back to another episode. I'm here today with Patrick Moloney, one of the members of F0ur Brothers, just one of the fastest growing comedy sketches pages on
Cheers, man.
on,
That's a big
on
intro.
social media. So today we're going to talk about balance, fitness and business, and a little bit about our personal stories. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'm Julian Solai and this is The Way of the World. So for all the viewers and the listeners, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so me and my brothers, we make comedy content online. We started off on TikTok just doing like sketches and stuff like that, and then obviously as every other social media platform had their version of TikTok, whether it's Instagram Reels and Facebook and YouTube Shorts and stuff, we just started to post more on there. We've been doing that for about 3 years now. Just enjoying it, man. Like obviously me and my brothers have always grown up enjoying each other's company.
Mm-hmm.
We've always got that. There's nothing more better than like a sibling rivalry. Like you've got your best friends and your mates, but competing with your brothers is like the most alpha thing ever. Thing is, back then TikTok was different. Like there was so many people using it, but not many people making content. So you had that was why everyone grew so quickly on TikTok. It was a lot easier versus say like Instagram or YouTube. You've got a load of people on there, but there was also so many people creating content, so you're trying to compete with loads of people. Now, obviously, TikTok 3 years later, you've got loads of people creating content, and not just specifically for TikTok. If you've got a podcast, you create clips for it. If you've got a TV show, they post that. Like TikTok it's almost like a Google now. You go onto TikTok and you search something and it pops up.
Is there any formula that you found like that works really well? Yeah,
Consistency, like
because also you've been helping your mom growing her account as well, right? And she's also been growing quite fast.
It's mad. It's like anyone, whatever you're doing, you can grow on social media. Like mom's a family law solicitor. Like what the hell? How do you grow on TikTok being like a law? Like that's on paper the most boring thing ever. But actually, there's so many people that want advice or are going through a divorce or whatever, married. So people are on TikTok, let's create content, all of a sudden someone will relate to it, and then it's a snowball effect. And yeah, to answer your question, consistency, like, and I'm not talking about consistency over like a week or a month. It's literally what you always talk about in the gym. It's the exact same thing. You need to be day in, day out, consistent with everything you do and treat it like a job. If you want to get onto social media or use it as a tool for your business, you need to treat it like a business. So like you've got your main business, but your social media needs to be a part of that 100%.
Absolutely.
And if you don't see results in the first month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, like you can't lose heart. You got to keep trying different things, posting like every day. And that sounds insane if you're not posting every day, but all it takes is like 1 day a week, thinking of new ideas. Maybe, you can bulk film everything, uploading them all and then seeing what worked.
So how does fitness fit in all of this for you?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I've always been rather skinny, not too much muscle. Naturally, I eat a lot, or I can eat a lot and not put on much weight. My brothers are completely opposite. They'll eat and they'll put on a bit of weight. So, and I've never been anxious or like worried about how I look, but I've always thought, I would like to put on a bit of weight, grow a bit of muscle. And growing up, I would go to the gym, and I'd be consistent for maybe 6 months, and I'd see a bit of gains, but then life would get in the way, and I'd stop, and then naturally
That consistency.
yeah, right, that consistency, and like it shows. And I've always tried on and off like to be consistent with it, but life gets in the way, and I think I made the decision. It was my mum actually who introduced me to you, to kind of think, what, I need a PT more than anything, just for the accountability. Obviously, the information you've given me and everything like that, like awesome. But for me, it's the idea like every Monday I've got to check in, knowing that throughout the week, okay, I've got to go because I know he's going to be asking me what I'm doing. If I didn't have that, I know I'd probably get lazy.
And is there anything of what you learned recently with fitness that is transferable into what you do with maybe business or?
Yeah, doing it when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like don't be wrong, I love like looking in the mirror now and thinking, oh, okay, look, I'm looking better. Like obviously still got a long way to go, but I'm liking the results. But when you've got a busy day and you've still got to go to the gym, or you've still got to make that food or prep for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You've just got to do it, or you could just sit on the couch and watch TV because that would just be really comfortable. Yeah, that's so transferable because it's like anything. It's like the whole, the cold shower thing's on a bit of a hype at the moment. Everyone's having a cold bath, and it's like it's the same thing. Doing something, as much as there's benefits like health wise, I think from the mental, it's like doing it because you don't want to do it, and it's hard, and then it transfers into like life of business or whatever. So for sure that element of it is definitely helped.
So yeah, this is a question that I've always had for myself, because obviously if we look at the energy that we spend on things and we have in general, it's fairly limited, as well as the time that we have, in a day is limited, and we need to kind of choose how to use it.
Yeah.
So do you feel like giving more time and energy to fitness is something that is limiting perhaps your creativity with your work?
It's such a good question, because it's like, yeah, 100%. Like, it's just choices. It's like, okay, I could be sat there and thinking, I've got so much emails to get through, or I've got to do this with the bank, or I've got to do this with have a call or a meeting, whatever. But at the same time, so it's easier to like say, right, because this is business, it's going to help me in a financial situation, I'll prioritize that. Oh, I've missed the gym. Oh, I've missed my food. Okay, it's fine. I'll do it tomorrow. But making that strong decision to be like, look, actually, I'm prioritizing my body is hard, because you're right. It does limit because there's only so many hours in a day.
Of course,
and I know
of
this sounds mental. Like 24 hours goes so quickly.
Yeah.
If you sleep for 8 hours, you've got 16 left. Okay, you work for 8 hours, you've got another 8. Like 8 hours, if you split it between going to the gym for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like cooking food takes a long time. Like it's not easy.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've only got like 4 hours left. So if you're trying to maybe got a second side hustle or meet up with friends, you've got a hobby playing golf, like your time goes so quickly. So every hour is so valuable. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it's that, like my past, I would say I've prioritized everything else apart from fitness, because in my head, fitness only benefits me, not anything else. But actually, I suppose, again, kind of, working alongside you, it's that mindset of like, actually, no, prioritizing fitness above anything else will help you, which will help everything else. Because I think as well, like if you walk into a room and you're well built, it gives you such a charisma without you even knowing, like an aura.
People have a different perception.
100%.
For sure.
Because it's the little, like, the way you look, it's hard. Like, that's not just overnight. You've trained for years to get to a point, and everyone who sees you knows that. So it's like, okay, or automatically it's like, this guy's hardworking, he's self-disciplined, and you can apply that now into life. So there is so many benefits to just taking that like hour or 2 hours, think, no, I'm going to prioritize the gym, prioritize food just for this 1 or 2 hours, and I'll come back to work tomorrow. But that is hard in the moment.
Yeah, of course.
That is really hard.
Did you ever feel like you were getting that energy back, like by giving more energy to fitness or to yourself? For instance, this happens for a lot of people, and it's something that I definitely see with a lot of my clients very often. The moment that initially, obviously, there's an investment of energy into doing something new and learning something new like fitness. But then afterwards, you kind of get that energy back because you generally just feel more energetic.
Yeah.
And your mindset is a bit more proactive. You can think and act a bit quicker. Did you perceive that or not so much?
Yeah, I do. I leave the gym and I don't ever regret the fact I've gone to the gym.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing. I think that's that little message there. Like I listened to a podcast and someone said it. And actually, every time I get to a point where I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym, I think of that thing of like, you will never ever regret going to the gym. And then it's so true, because you leave the gym and I'm great.
This kind of brings me to my next question, which I think is probably the biggest question I wanted to ask you today, and it's, what do you think about balance? Because obviously you're we can consider you a high performer, someone that has a lot going on, in your life. You have a business. You also need to be quite creative. Fitness, relationships, family as well, because obviously the bond that you have with your brothers is something that obviously you guys have the content and the work that you do together, but at the same time you have to keep growing that in a way, maintain it, right? Do things for each other and go on holidays and stuff like that. I haven't seen my brother in fucking 5 years, for instance, right? But so yeah, what do you think about balance? Do you think there is a balance? How do you go about finding it?
There is a balance, and I think you have to be disciplined to have a balance, because when you go all in one thing, because let's say whether it's a hobby, like you get into golf and you're just mad about golf and you're obsessed with it and you want to play golf all day every day and that's all you're thinking about, obviously you're going to drop off in other areas, which in the moment don't bother you, but long term they will. You'll be like, oh, I wish I carried on doing this, I wish I carried on doing that. Same in business. If you went all in on business, all of a sudden your relationships start dropping, whether it's friends, family, whatever. And I think, again, the gym, you can take away elements of the gym for this. Like, you've got to do things you don't always want to do, but knowing that it's the right thing to do. For example, like, maybe I don't want to spending time with mom and dad. Maybe just in that 1 hour, I'd prefer to play golf. But actually, just spending 1 hour a week with mom and dad outside of work, outside of anything, just having a chat or whatever, long term will benefit me. And balance is not this mystical thing of like, oh, you know, I've complete life and I've got everything ticking over. Like, balance is work. You don't just fall into a life of like, or a lifestyle of balance. Like, you have to consciously think, right, okay, I've spent an hour or two with my friends, spent an hour or two with my family, got my work covered, got sleep covered, spending time with myself, whether it's at the gym. And you've got to be consciously thinking about balance in a weird way, even though balance in itself feels like it's this thing that should just you'd slip into. I think you do need to consciously work at it, for sure.
I think that's a really interesting perspective, because, for instance, like, my way of thinking has always been around the be obsessed or be average, right? So
Okay.
in my mind, if I want to excel at something, I have to, you know, get rid of any form of balance and actually, you know, follow the obsession as long as it's constructive. You don't want the obsession to be destructive, but as long as it is constructive, then you kind of need to follow that obsession in order to excel at something. But what you're actually saying is that you need to, you know, have a balance, and you need to work
Yes.
to have that balance.
Well, I've done that before, where I used to work in hospitality, and that was my career. I loved it. I loved working 18 hours a day. I'd get in at 6, leaving at 11, like, just because I knew the route to the top and I wanted to get there at all costs. I'd work 6 days a week, sometimes 7, because people would be sick, and I'd come in and cover and everything like that. And I'd happily do that again because I loved it. But what lacked was my health. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't seeing my friends. I wasn't seeing my family. And in the moment, none of that mattered to me. Once I came out of the situation and realised for a year, 2 years, as much as I'd made so much gains in this one area, overall, I was falling back, because across my life, I was decreasing in a load of different pillars. And I think it's so easy to get into the mindset of like being obsessed with one thing and just attacking it, because I would argue that's the easier thing to do, because you're obsessed with it. So it is you want to do it, right? But I think taking the approach of like, kind of going back to being consistent of doing the things you don't always want to do in the time over a period of time, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you'll look back and be like, okay, I've got everything kind of covered here. And you may not be as far along as you want to be in a certain thing, but across the board, everything's moved at the same pace, and you yourself have grown. I could probably be a lot further along if I just focused 100% on business, but I wouldn't be as strong as I am. Or maybe I'm not as close to my friends, or do you know what I mean? So it's like, absolutely. What is success in that kind of
or what are you willing to sacrifice in order to get there? But then the question is, then how do you establish that balance? How do you know, okay, this is good for me, this isn't so good for me? How do you catch yourself?
I would say experience. Like, you only know yourself. I think you've got to fail in order to learn. You can't just be like told. Okay, you can be told, in a sense of like, if someone says, look, Pad, I think you're working too hard, or I think I haven't seen you in a while, like, what's going on, or you're worrying too much about a certain thing, that obviously you need to surround yourself by the right person, but at the same time, you need to fail at life in order to know what that feels like. And I think intuition is a big part of that. So like, deep down, you'll know the right answer to anything you're asking, like whether it's a relationship, whether it's a business decision, whether it's a family, like, should I see this person? If you know you should see that person, even if you don't want to, like, deep down, your intuition, your gut instinct is always right. And sometimes maybe just taking a few minutes to sit down and think, or if you need to, if you feel like you're in a position where everything's too easy and I'm doing everything for myself, that's another thing actually. I think, you know, if you're in a position where all you're doing is doing things for yourself, whether and that could be seen as self-love. So like, I'm going out on the weekend because I want to spend time with my friends. I'm going to the gym because I want to spend time on me. Like that's great, but you do need to do things for other people as well. That isn't going to directly benefit you. And I think, and if you don't do that, you will find yourself not having the right balance. I don't know. I just feel like you'd know it inside. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just very interesting to hear from your perspective, because I think the bond that you have with your family in particular, I think it's a beautiful thing. And I actually think nowadays it's quite rare. And you can tell that everyone puts work into, you know, making that happen. You know, the holidays, the times that you put aside to spend together. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And you hear a lot of people at the very top talking about how they regret not spending enough time with the family. So there's definitely things that you can kind of, you know, catch on, you know, from people that have been successful or have made mistakes. But I think also what you said in terms of having not even necessarily like many people, but even just one or two significant people in your life that know what's good for you and can kind of help you and, you know, and tell you, well, look, I think you're focusing too much on this, or I don't think you're giving enough time to this. Do you have, like, who would you say is that person for you in your life?
My family, 100%. My friends, I've known my friends way before we were on social media, and it's still nice to have them as like a ground point, because obviously my family, my brothers, like more so, they're obviously in the same world I'm in, and like you're going to these places and you know being invited to this, and you're over here and you're doing that, and it can feel a bit of a whirlwind. But then being able to go back home and like, I say this as if like we're not like special, but like you go back home and you know you go back down to earth with your friends, and it does ground you. Like they'll take the piss out of the videos and be like, what the hell are you doing, sort of thing. And it, as much as you be like, oh, your friends aren't supportive, no, they are supportive, but they're also just giving you a reality check. Like you're not Mr. Big Time. It's fine. So yeah, like your circles are super important. And I think I heard this thing like a few weeks ago, and I thought that's so true. It's like you are who your circle is, and it's like your 5 to 10 closest people, not even that, just your 5 closest people, whether it's your family or your friends, will literally
tell you who you
are. Like I could probably tell the person you are just by who you hang around with, because generally you are the kind of your environment, right? And it's the same thing. It's like if I hang around with people who don't go to the gym, I'm probably not going to go to the gym as much as if I was hanging around people who always go to the gym.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So your circles are super important.
Generally, it does sound like you have a very good intuition, and I think that helps a lot. I think being able to tell what's good for you and what isn't good for you is definitely an important part of the process. And I think you can only develop that with self-awareness and experience, as you said. Is there any like episode that you feel like sharing where you've realized, oh, I fucked up and actually I need to give more time or more energy to this or that?
The first thing that came to mind is spending time with mum and dad. Like it seems I still live at home, 27. Not proud of it.
I mean, if you're comfortable, if it works for you.
And so like I see them all the time, and obviously I work with mum. But outside of that, I always find myself not actually putting down the phone and just sitting and being with them. That's the first thing that came to mind maybe a year ago, and it was a conscious effort to be like I don't know. The worst thing can happen. Like someone gets in a car crash. And I know I shouldn't think like this, but what if one day it happens, they're in a car crash and you're like, oh my God, all the times I was in the kitchen and dad was trying to start a conversation and I didn't entertain it because I was on my phone on Instagram. And it's the little things, and I was just like, like I want to spend just a little bit of time with both mom and dad, especially mom, because it's like mom's got obviously dad and 4 boys. It's a very male-dominated family household, and she's got 4 brothers as well. So she's just surrounded. She's surrounded by like male testosterone, and she's got I know she's got like some of the girlfriends now, but she's got no daughters to do like girly things. So I was like, you know what, once a month, once every 2 months, me and Mum will go into London and just do a bit of shopping because I know
Okay.
she loves shopping.
Okay.
Obviously, I'll benefit from that as well, but like, I don't, it's not a number one thing on my list to go into
Sure.
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But
of
like,
course.
it's little things like that. I'm just like, you know what, I want to do it just to spend a bit of time with Mum. It's easy with Dad. I can just relate to with the sport. Always go back to the sport. But that's probably the number one thing for me. Like, again, it's doing things you don't always want to do, but it's the right thing to do.
Would you say you're a people pleaser?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot, and it's. I wouldn't say it's always a good thing. When I was younger, it would always be the number one thing on my mind is like, what do people think? Like, I'm working hard enough to like, is he impressed with my work? Is I want to make sure he's happy with everything I'm doing, like making sure I'm not lazy or anything like that. But sometimes that could be at the cost of what actually is good for you. So I have obviously with age, obviously I've gotten older and learned to pull back a little bit. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it has its, obviously it's a good thing to want to, please people, but not at the expense of yourself sometimes.
No, of course. Because I think you gave a really good guideline earlier, and you said if you're only doing things for yourself,
Yeah.
then it probably means that to find that balance, you also got to think about doing things that are a bit more selfless.
Yeah.
And I think being a people pleaser myself, I actually had to work for the opposite, and you can probably relate to this.
Yeah.
So you had to work to find the time to do more for yourself. Would you say that was your experience as well?
100%. Being comfortable by saying no. I think like going on that point, actually touching on that point of being like selfish, like we do live in a world where more and more is about doing for yourself. So it's so easy to be wrapped up in a little bubble of like being me or doing everything for yourself. So to be selfish is like kind of almost congratulated now because it's like, oh, you're doing you and stuff. And actually,
I know, right? Yeah.
For your soul, I don't think it's good. You need to do things that doesn't benefit you in any way, just to give, almost in a weird way. But then obviously you don't want to take that too far as well.
Yeah.
So again, it's back to balance. It's like you got to try and find a middle ground.
Yeah. What do you think? Like super deep question. What do you think your purpose is?
Oh, I love that.
Because obviously you're approaching 30. I'm turning 30 in a month more.
Oh,
or less.
really?
Yeah, 28th
Okay.
of July.
Christ.
So yeah, no.
Here we go.
Yeah. So I'm sure you probably. I don't know if you've asked yourself this question, but it's definitely a question that I'm asking myself a lot. Approaching 30. So what do you know what your purpose is, or do you think you know?
On a super generic level, I would like to say our purpose, I know this is probably a boring answer, but our purpose is to reproduce and raise the next generation. That's why I think it's super important you find a life partner, you get married first, you build the ground, the foundations, and then you raise a family.
That's a biological purpose, right?
Right? But it's also, it's important because it's like,
absolutely.
that is your purpose. Like as soon as from everyone who I've spoke to who's got a relationship and a family, all of a sudden their kids are their purpose. Like that is, which is important. For me, honestly, I don't know. I want to work super hard. I know I can achieve a lot with the time I've got. I'm surrounding myself with high performing people. I'm doing what I can to just I don't know. It's a good question. Like, what is your purpose? Like, I don't think you'll ever know. I think
no, for sure.
I don't think you'll ever know. I think you'll get to a point in life where you'll always be critical of what you've done. Maybe I should have done this instead. I could have worked harder there. I could have worked less hard and spent more time here.
Because for me, like, it's not so much about having a definite answer because how do you know? But it's more about having some sort of guideline for yourself in terms of what you think, going back to the balance, what you think is good for you and what do you think you should pursue. Like, if to give you an example, if I know that my purpose is to, I don't know, transform people's lives through fitness. So if I know that this is my purpose, then I know that it would be good then to spend the majority of my time and energy doing that. So like when I think of, or when I ask someone, what do you think your purpose is, it's mostly based on, how would you like to spend more of your time and energy in the future, and if that makes sense.
Okay.
But it sounds like your purpose is very much related to the family, in a way as well, having a good partner and being able to
Yeah.
to take that further.
I think for me, because like I'd say over the past few years, I've realised that will be number one priority for me. Having a partner, having a really good, and I think maybe that's based on because I've had such a good family, and mom and dad, in my opinion, have like set the standard of like how to raise a family. I would like to do the same, and for me, everything else kind of takes a secondary.
Wow.
As much as like I do, it is important. You want to make sure you've got a good job, you've got a good, outside of that, your own hobbies and stuff. I think it's all geared up towards building a family.
That's beautiful though.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what, like, I mean, I could, I suppose, ask that, like, you kind of mentioned there about your purpose being about making people like healthier and better. Would you say that's your purpose?
I think no one ever asked me questions. No, I think actually it is a question that I ask myself a lot, and I think fitness is a tool. It's a channel, and I think it's very straightforward. It's very direct. You do something physically, and that affects you positively, in a lot of different areas of your life. And it's very direct in that sense. But I do think that it's a channel. And if I was to project myself in the future, I would definitely see myself expanding, further from fitness, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I think if I was to think about my purpose, it would be something along the lines of helping people definitely transform their lives, but more on a 360 degrees level. So it'd be more related to their mindset, or more related to their own self-expression. And more than anything, I think it's freedom. Because I think I'm not going to get like too much into it, but when I think about my story and everything that I've gone through, and all the painful stuff, they're all giving me one very important thing that I think a lot of people don't get to have that easily, which is freedom. Because when you are rejected or when you are abandoned, it's very painful, but at the same time, you're left alone by yourself. And so you have all the freedom. It's not a freedom that you necessarily conquered, but it's a freedom that you have. And I think I realized that for myself, that, my purpose is very much related to helping people have, find their freedom in their life, to do the things that they want to do, to be the people that they want to be. So I think,
Man, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because like, you're right. Most people, I mean, I've take myself for example. I would say I've had quite a privileged upbringing. Like, I've not really had too many troubles, the usual stuff at school and stuff, but nothing mental. So I've never had to experience that, what you're talking about. But you're right. You do. You've now been, I assume from what you're saying, just absolute rock bottom. And so you now know what that feels like. So the only way is up, and you've got this liberating freedom to like push yourself in all these different directions, knowing, well, I already know what the bottom feels like, so I can only go upwards. And that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a bit like the metaphor that I often use is, when you're a kid and you go to school, your life kind of revolves around that. You know one thing for sure, and that's that you have to wake up and go to school.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that, and what I'm trying to say is that there's comfort in that. You're not free. You have to go to school, and that's kind of your purpose, and it's given to you. You haven't chosen that, but there's comfort in the fact that you have that certainty, but there is no freedom. So imagine if you didn't have to go to school and you had to decide how to spend your time as a kid, and you had all the freedom in the world, because money isn't really an issue, nothing is really an issue. That's when you have a lot of freedom, but it can also be scary in a way where you're like, okay, what do I do with my time? Or like, who am I? So I think, with freedom, it's about, finding a balance with that as well, between doing the things that you're supposed to do, or the things that have been designed for you or have been decided for you, based on perhaps your family dynamics, or the position that you are within your group or your environment, or the way that you've been brought up, but at the same time find your own freedom of expression. So thinking about what your own person, your inner self wants. And so it's never really an extreme. Some people might go through extremes of, only being completely devoted to a certain dynamic and to what's been decided for them, or being completely devoted to, their own self-expression, which I think is more or less where I am. But I think the truth is that you got to find a balance with that as well.
Do you feel like you're getting to that point?
I don't think so, actually.
Really?
But I think it's purely because I think for me that side is completely missing, and I think it's always been missing. So
Are you trying to find it at all, or is it just
I
you're
think
rejecting it almost?
yeah, I think like I think if like for me, I think I've realized that the world just needs different kind of people. You know, the world needs people that work 9 to 5 and entrepreneurs. It needs both kind of people, and I think in the position where I am, I'm kind of, as I'm turning 30, I'm kind of accepting that I'm in a position where I have to kind of serve this purpose, and I'm finding the fulfillment in that. And never say never. I always try to give myself the benefit of doubt and to relearn as much as possible about myself, and that's definitely something that I've been pushing myself to do for quite a long time. But I think perhaps I will find that balance when I have my own family, if that will happen. But I think for the time being, for me, it's very much about doing the best that I can with what I have in front of me. And this is what I have right now. And I think it's definitely something that I've built for myself, but it's also an opportunity that I have. And it's probably, an opportunity that...
There's got to be a lot of fulfillment in that. The fact
Yeah.
you built this thing for yourself, and it's to the point where it is now, and you're like, well, this was me.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same as you guys. Like you must be looking back at like 2019 and thinking, wow, my life was very different.
Yeah.
If you can make someone laugh, I think it's a really skillful thing to do, and you guys manage it so well, and it comes so natural to you. And I think because you can have the talent, and that's one thing, but building something with that talent, I think that's the real skill. And I feel like, again, I don't really know your brothers, but it does sound like more than anyone else in the group, you're the one that is really driving things forward in terms of the business, to be able to actually, do the things that you guys love in a way that it makes sense and is profitable, and and you can carry on doing, for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, like I think we're all super lucky. Like we all have a similar mindset. Like we all want to get to a point where, like, this is super successful.
What's next for you guys now? Are you doing any live events or stuff like that?
No, we did dabble with events. Like the whole meet and greet thing. Like is like I think we've kind of changed our tune a little bit. Like we're on people's phones a lot, so people know of us. But from an actual meet and greet point of view, that's quite a difficult. You've got to have fans, not so much followers. Sidemen have loads of fans. People on YouTube tend to have loads of fans. People on TikTok tend to have loads of followers. So it has been quite difficult to like do a live. We want to do something like where we love going out, we love drinking, we're lads, and we wanted to incorporate the two. So we made this like events thing, and it's been difficult, to be fair. Like it has been difficult. We tried to make loads of fun content out of it, but I think it's a learning experience where, like I said earlier, you need to fail in order to like we did this clothing line 2-3 years ago, didn't work out, failed. But going forward, it's something, now we've opened this golf business, there's obviously opportunities there that we can take that past experience and bring into the new thing. So I think it's always important, even if you're happy with what you're doing, to keep trialing new things, because you never know what else is around the horizon. You might just fall into something and be like, oh, that's my new passion. You might fail at it, but then you're not realizing that failure in 5 years' time will actually help you do something else. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
So constantly try the new things, and just keep going to the gym.
Thank you so much for coming.
No, man. Cheers for cheers for inviting me.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell
Notification
button.
bell.
Yeah, whatever that is.
All that jazz.
And I'll see you in the next episode.